Hey there, it's Anne. In this video, I'm going to explain the grammar of the second conditional in English. I'm going to show you how to form this structure and when to use it. So the second conditional looks like this. Here are a few examples. If I could meet any famous person, I would meet Queen Elizabeth. I would like to meet Queen Elizabeth. Or if I had $1 million, I would quit my job and travel the world. If it weren't raining right now, we could play baseball. Second conditional is something that we use when we want to talk about an unreal situation. It's called an unreal conditional, or hypothetical, or contrary, opposite to fact. So this construction is something we use when we're describing something unreal. So of course when I make this sentence, if I had $1 million, I would quit my job and travel the world, I'm describing something that's not true. But let's look a little bit at the grammar of how we construct the second conditional. So you can see that this sentence and any second conditional sentence has two parts. It's two clauses, and a clause is basically a group of words with a subject and a verb. So the second conditional here has two clauses. One of them starts with the word if. This is called the if clause, and the other one is called the main clause. So let's look at the specific grammar of each clause. So when I have the if clause, you'll notice right here that my verb is in the past. This is the rule for second conditional. It doesn't mean I'm talking about the past, so this can be confusing. This is just the grammar construction that we must use with the second conditional when we're talking about these unreal situations. So the if clause is going to use the past, and that might be past simple or past progressive, past continuous. And the main clause is always going to use would or could and then the base form of the verb. This is how we form second conditional. Let me show you a few more examples. If I owned an airplane, I would travel around the world and visit my friends. Or if I lived in Paris, I could visit the Eiffel Tower whenever I wanted. So remember, we're using the past simple here, but I'm not talking about the past. I'm just talking about some situation that doesn't exist. So, if her parents knew about her bad grades, they would be very upset. You can see that my if clause uses past. This is the past form of the verb know is knew. And my main clause uses would and the base form of the verb, which here is be, would be. Here's another example. If she studied more, she could get better grades. So I can use could with the base form of the verb. If she had better teachers, she would be more motivated to learn. Now don't forget that the past could also be negative. So it might look something like this. If you didn't drive so fast, you wouldn't get so many speeding tickets. If we weren't so busy, we would love to go to the movies with you. Or if it wasn't raining, we could go to the park. Here's an example with progressive. And keep this last sentence in mind. We're going to come back and talk about this point again in just a minute. And here's another type of sentence you might see. If humans could fly, we wouldn't need cars. So could is the past form of can. So you're going to see this sometimes in second conditional also because it is another past form. Or if I could travel back in time, I would visit ancient Egypt. So I asked you to remember this sentence. If it wasn't raining, we could go to the park. So here's more of an advanced point about second conditional that I want to show you. So I have two sentences here. If it wasn't raining, we could go to the park. If it weren't raining, we could go to the park. So normally we don't use weren't with it, right? We would say it wasn't raining. But with second conditional, we actually use were with all of the forms. So we say, for example, if I were you, or if you were here, if it weren't raining. This is technically the correct way to do it. Now, a lot of people will make a sentence like the first one. If it wasn't raining, we could go to the park. And this is considered more informal or more casual, and it's actually more common. But if you want to be technically 100% correct with your grammar, like perfectly correct, then you'll make the sentence like the second one here. If it weren't raining, we could go to the park. So this is a very, very common construction, like I said. Maybe something like this. If I were you, I would go home early today. If I were you, I would tell your boss to shut up. Or if she were a nicer person, she would have more friends. So you can see that I'm using were with I and with she, and this is the way that we do it in second conditional, if you really want to be correct. So there are just two more things to say about second conditional, and they are related. So you notice that before, all of my sentences started with if. They started with the if clause, right? Like this. If she were a nicer person, she would have more friends. So you can make the sentence like this, beginning with if, or you can switch the order of your clauses and you can put the main clause first, like this. She would have more friends if she were a nicer person. So this is something you can do with your conditional sentences. You can change the order. You can start with the if clause, or you can start with the main clause, and they mean exactly the same thing. There's only one difference. If you can see it, the first sentence uses a comma and the second sentence doesn't. So this is another important rule. When we start the sentence with if, we will put a comma after the if clause. And if you put your if clause second, so you have the word if in the middle of your sentence, then you don't use a comma. Let me show you one more example like this. If you studied more, comma, you would have better grades, or you would have better grades if you studied more. These two sentences mean the same thing. They're both correct. The second one doesn't have a comma. The first one does because it starts with if. So that's it. Here's what we have for second conditional. Remember, second conditional describes something unreal, hypothetical, contrary to fact. You're going to have two clauses in your second conditional sentence. You'll have your if clause and your main clause. In your if clause, you'll always use a past form of the verb, but you're not talking about the past. This is just the grammar rule. So it might be past simple, past progressive, or it might be could, which is the past form of can. And in your main clause, you're going to use would or could and the base verb. We'll use were, not was, for singular and plural. Use were all the time. And you can begin with the if clause or the main clause. It doesn't matter at all. The only difference is the punctuation. You're going to use a comma when you begin with if. So that's it for second conditional. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.